Welcome back to Life is Art, a movie podcast. I'm Adam Garber, hosting with my lifelong friend David Camacho. How you doing today, Dave?
I'm good, friend. How are you?
Uh, I'm hanging in there. We had a little kerfuffle today, my friend.
A kerfuffle? What's that, Adam?
I think this thing's going to get a little heated today. It's been a tough couple. You know, the beauty about being friends is that you're different people and you live different lives, and that you're able to combat really hard with each other sometimes and not give each other exactly what you want. Because at the end of the day, I can turn the computer off, I can shut the phone down, and I can just let it go, brother. So
Once you spend 2 weeks with someone in the Chihuahuan desert, I think you can survive just about anything together.
we can survive just about anything. Well, enough of the personal antics. Let's get into the thick of it. Today we're going to talk about Zootopia 2, a Disney flick, starring Jason Bateman. I love his cynical side. Nick Wilde, I think, is a brilliant character with lots of depth. It's one of those characters that it's a bad boy gone good. And then we have the good princess character that's confused and can't exactly express her feelings of Judy Hopps. Um, I feel like the movie starts off almost to an homage of like Rush Hour Bad Boys. Did you feel that happening a little bit for you, Dave?
Yeah, I think this is a sequel to a 2016 smash that is well loved. I looked up the Rotten Tomatoes score, and critics gave it a 92 and fans a 98%, which is really high. So everyone loves this film. And so what I like about it is it's been so long, you might have forgotten what happened at the end of the last one. They start this one off with a little bit of a refresher, so you remember who the main characters are, a little bit about their dynamic, etc. And then you just hit the ground running, like you say. You start off with a chase scene, etc. So it's a little bit familiar territory, a little bit cliched, but definitely there's something for everyone. There's something for the adults in the room. There's something for the kids.
Yeah, I feel like children's movies have come a long way since we were kids, and that they're geared not only that the little ones will have fun, but the adults that are taking the little ones to the theater have a pretty have a good experience as well. I mean, this
Well,
this movie's got themes of prejudice, discrimination, society biases. It's got it all. I mean, in a way, it's got too much going on, but it's got a little piece for just about anybody that's got a moral cause.
yeah, I mean, it's definitely an interesting portrayal of New York City. You know, New York City informs the look and feel of Zootopia, where they live. It's, of course, a much more advanced because in this world of Zootopia, there's a climate for each type of animal. So if you're a polar bear, you don't have to suffer in a desert-like environment. And that's the theme of the film, actually. I mean, the plot revolves around this technology that they have and who invented it and who gets credit for it and who doesn't.
Who rules the world becomes a very important feature.
For
Like all
sure.
societies, you have an entitled class, you have a rich class, you have a class that gets respect, and you have the poor class that might not be respected. And I,
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
there's
yeah.
lots of, I mean, the other side would probably say this is the biggest woke film Disney has ever created. Although that's a pretty evolving list due
Hmm.
to the climate controlling weather walls. I think allude to climate potentials, and climate disasters that are probably near to our horizon.
Well, that's very interesting about the classes because in the film, you don't notice it in the first one, but there are no reptiles, right? In this one, there are reptiles. And so, why were they written out? Well, we find out that they were purposefully written out by a family of lynxes that hates reptiles. And so they've kind of banished them. And it's funny when you go to the land of the reptiles, the neighborhood in which they inhabit, it looks a lot like the South, the American South. It looks like Louisiana, maybe Alabama, Mississippi. The animals are meant to sort of connote a more backwoods existence. It's given its due. It's not respect. It's not put in a disrespectful light, but they definitely are portrayed as a little bit weird, a little bit slow, a little bit different compared to the sort of city slicker dwellers of Zootopia, the other guys, the mammals. For us, I guess, growing up in the 70s, classics like The Rescuers, those are, gold, I find, in the canon. And subsequent viewings and subsequent generations, I think, feel the same way. That was a real great time for the House of Disney, the House of the Mouse. But there are direct callbacks to the rescuers in this film. If you notice, when they go to the chase scene in the reptile land, they're on a steamboat that's kind of at an angle. That's straight out of the rescuers. So they're kind of playing with some of the themes that they explored in other films.
It really shows Disney's depth and what they have access to and rights to. That not another studio could have pulled this one off without costing them $1 million and $1 billion just to get the rights for stuff. And you can definitely see how far Disney can, or how many little elements they can hide and little Easter eggs they can put in the movie. And I just thought I brought this up to you when we were talking about the movie because I don't think this one was on our radar for sure to talk about. But I found it really interesting that the first one came out in 2016, and now this one's coming out in 2025. And although you mentioned very clearly saying that these films have been in production for years, that they don't just come about, I found it very interesting in my mind that these literally begin at the beginning of Trump's term. And that although he only politicked for a year and a half for that 2016 campaign, he's been politicking for this one through and through ever since he was president. He's been politicking to be this one. So I feel like the themes and the classes and the desperate attempt by the Lynxes to hold on to power at any cost, hiding truths, just were direct correlations to the Trump presidency, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think given that the first one came out in 2016, maybe that would be more accidental because it would have been created in 2012, 2013, 2014. But this one, having come 10 years later almost, you definitely work in that notion of this corrupt family, right? So it's not just one individual, which you typically have, but here you have a patriarch and then a daughter and a son character who look really slimy and a whole actual family reference. So I think that holds what you're saying
Yeah,
about
I
the
definitely saw Don Jr. in this one for sure.
yeah,
I mean,
that's
the
right,
only thing he
very
wasn't
much so.
doing was lines of cocaine, but we'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I like the fact that it presented this positive vision of New York City as a place of tolerance. As we all know, New York City has its rough history of racial persecution and violence, gangs. The last guy who arrives in terms of the ethnicity gets the short end of the stick. Usually has to live in the worst part of town, in crime-infested, rat-infested places. So this film doesn't shy away from that. It's the best view of us as a species, I guess, writ large. I mean, this is going way, way back to La Fontaine and the idea that you could represent different types of people as animals and then tell stories about human characteristics with animals as stand-ins. I'm thinking of a New Yorker cover, a very famous one, that had a bunch of animals in the subway, right? So there was a big buffalo and an alligator and etc. for the different types of people you meet on the streets of New York City. If you remember in the first one, there's that great iconic scene now where they go to the DMV and that sloth makes a little cameo in this one too. I don't want to spoil it for people who haven't seen it, but if you like that part, you're going to be happy to see him reappear in this one.
And I also
Yeah.
find that this comes at a really interesting time because this movie probably was in development right when DeSantis was trying to blow Disney up and
Yeah,
take
yeah.
control. So I find it to be a very interesting tactic for them to take. Although you have Jimmy Kimmel on one hand, where they're not standing up to that or they're kowtowing, in other ways where I think it's more writer development and actors, they're pushing the envelope in a concept of rebellion and unity that we can get through this if we unite as a people of different peoples. We can overthrow the Darth Lord, you know?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Now, you mentioned before the relationship between the bunny and the fox, right? Her name is Judy Hopps,
Certainly.
and he's Mr. Wild, Nick Wilde. I think that's the emotional core of the film, and for me, the high point, I don't know if it was the same way for you, but it was when they, at the very end, sort of take off their emotional armor and kind of get naked in front of each other, emotionally speaking. But I think these films like this, the one about emotions that came out recently, Inside Out, those couple of films, they're really teaching kids. They're giving them master classes on how to sort of get along with other people, about interpersonal communication skills, about understanding their own emotions and where they come from, and how to accept and work with other people.
Disney has some of the best writers, some of the best ideas. and some of the best integration of those ideas into the final product, in my opinion. And they've been doing it for a long time and continue to push the envelope.
Yeah, I mean, in comparison, you look at the films of Pixar, for example, which are great. I mean, they've made a lot of the classics from the 90s and onwards as well. Of course, with computer generated animation. But one trend that spans both animation houses in this case that I don't really love, I'm kind of tired of, is this kind of postmodern wink, wink, nudge, nudge. So I get that you want to offer something for the adults in the audience as well. But ever since The Simpsons hit the small screen, everything is a reference to everything else. And I'm kind of tired of it now, this kind of postmodernism where, in this film you have references to The Shining, for instance, which I know you recently watched again. And it's a little bit like, can we stop with that, please? And I'll compare that with Studio Ghibli, which we talked about in our offline chat as well, which is the premier Japanese animation house making great films like Spirited Away and a host of other classics, Ponyo, etc., where it's a self-contained world. They don't feel the need to always call out to pop cultural landmarks or sort of wink, wink, nudge, nudge references. So I'm kind of tired of that. I wish movies would move beyond that.
I don't know if I agree with you on that point, Dave. It's almost like brain teasers for me, looking for those Easter eggs. And on a second or third viewing, it actually creates a nice depth of the film that you're able to find these things and look around the whole celluloid to see different aspects of it. But I mean, I agree that it's low-hanging fruit sometimes. And if you don't have the great story, if you don't have character development, if you don't have that buddy romance, and that introspection as well. It doesn't live up. It doesn't live up. And if that's all you have, then it can be very weak. So I
Yeah,
agree and disagree.
going back to the notion of this interpersonal relationship between this fox and the bunny, there's a scene where they're on a sting operation. They're going to a sort of warehouse to trap someone, and they have a baby carriage, right? And so that led me to think, okay, well, what does that mean? Can a fox and a rabbit actually have a baby? Like let's say they have a family together, right? These interspecies pairs. Like what is that even like in the world of Zootopia? What does that even mean, right? Because you only see small versions of animals like bunnies, her relatives, for instance, but you never see offspring between an interspecies pair like that. So I thought it was kind of an interesting uh, idea. There's in the first film, there's a gay couple, clearly marked gay couple that's a neighbor of Bunny in her apartment, two gazelles, I think, or antelope or something, and that's been claimed by the gay community. They have them on T-shirts, and they just love to reference these guys. So maybe that's when they first got in trouble with DeSantis and crew.
Let's go back to that two character development, and that why I find the depth of the relationship in their differences. That if you had two bunnies with similar notions or whatever that were going along this adventure together, it wouldn't be that interesting, and it wouldn't pull at my strings. But the fact that they're so different, the fact that the fox has this cynical bad boy style where he solves everything almost as a con man in tough situations, and then you have the bunny that's almost an altruist, a goody two shoer that wants to abide by the law but has difficulty expressing her emotions. I thought really that dichotomy gives these characters a lot of depth and a lot of richness, in my opinion.
Yeah, they're definitely meant to contrast with each other, right? So I've worked with some young people who have just joined a company in a corporate environment, and they're very much like the bunny, right? So they're full of energy. They have all this optimism and enthusiasm. They want to change the world. And there is a little bit of a breaking in period where you have to acclimate them and tell them, that's not how it's going to work here. It's a little bit different. You have to kind of adjust yourself to us rather than the other way around. I really like the Bateman character. I think it's a good match for him. I listened to the podcast Smartless. I used to be a religious listener to it. I felt like I got to know him as a person through his interactions with his two best friends. And he seems a lot like the Fox. I mean, he seems like perfectly typecast in that role.
I was going to ask you, do you think that when famous actors do voice dialogue in movies, do you feel like in a way they're able to bring more of what we even perceive as themselves, like a character that they've honed over the years, that not having that physical side gives them a little bit more, that we almost assume that the character's voice brings along all that baggage of their characters.
It's very freeing for actors, I think. I heard an interview with Mark Hamill, who was in kind of an indie film this year. And of course, everybody knows Mark Hamill as Luke Skywalker, right? That's where he made his name back in the 70s. And he's kind of defined by that role, I think, still. But he had a great career in animation, both on television. He was the voice of the Joker on the Batman series. And he also did a lot of movies, including some Studio Ghibli films. And he said that it's very freeing for an actor because, of course, as you age, you lose your looks, you might gain weight, you might have some other physical defect that disqualifies you for some roles. But your voice, if you work on your voice, you can be anyone, and so he's enjoyed it. He says very, very liberating for an actor to get these kinds of roles. And Will Arnett, to follow up on the Bateman conversation, Will Arnett is in a new film in which he plays someone, at least from the previews, who seems a lot like he is in real life as well. Kind of like living that life of stand-up entertainer, kind of on the margins, going through divorces, the kids, etc. I can't wait to see it. I know we talked about it. You see it. You said maybe it's a little bit of a downer, but I think it's going to be a great film. So I hope we get to review that in the future as well.
I'm sure we will. You know, I love sad movies or movies that make you cry, and desperation movies. So it's definitely right up my alley. I just worry it might be too right up my alley and cause a little depression, but I'll work through it with you, Dave. Well, this was a good talk. I feel like we touched on a lot of subjects. I definitely feel like we were able to pull politics into this one bigly. Yeah, I feel like this is a good synopsis of the film for us, Dave.
Yeah, that was a good one. Thanks, Adam.
All right, until next week.